I'm Teresa, and today I'm going to show you how I like to make napkins out of quilting cotton. And also Shelly is going to be here showing us how she finishes hers on the serger. So I'll show you two different methods. I'm going to do more of a regular hem with my top stitching, edge stitching foot, and Shelly on the serger. So I have this pillow that I made a few years ago that I finally get to take home. It doesn't have to be a sample at the store anymore. Yay! So I wanted to make some matching napkins. So I pulled the bolt here, and we're going to show you first how to cut, and then we're going to show you the two different methods of finishing the edges. Okay, so I am making 6 napkins, and I use 28 inches. 28 inches isn't an exact number that you can usually buy when you go to the store for fabric. However, if you call us, we'll sell you 29, and you can trim it down and make 6 napkins. Or an easier way would just be to get a 1.25 yards, and that's basically perfect for 9 napkins. So with a few extra inches to square it up on the sides. But I just need 6. So I cut 28 inches off the bolt. I actually did cut it already, so let's just get that out of the way. And now I have this piece that is 28 inches by width of fabric. I am going to cut it down. I'm going to cut it from the fold 7 inches to make a 14-inch napkin, and then another 14 inches from there. And to make it easy, I'm going to fold it in half this way and line up my edge there with a line. And I want to make sure it's straight this way too. Everything looks nice and straight. And remember, you do not want to cut off the fold, because if I cut 7 inches over, that's going to give me the full 14 inches of the napkin. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and line up my ruler and cut. And then I'm going to go 14 inches from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then here at 14, oops, make sure it's nice and flat. And cut that. I love these rotary cutters. These Femore rotary cutters have a ball bearing system in here that makes them cut through fabric like you wouldn't believe. Love it. So on some fabrics, you'll have more selvage and fabric left over here. On here, I know it cut it down pretty far, but for those of you who like to save selvages, this is a good opportunity to get some good ones. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up and turn it the other way, and I'm going to cut it into 14-inch pieces. And you can just throw this one on top too, because why not? So I'm going to line this up with my lines here, all my layers, and I'm going to cut at 14 inches over. All right, so now I have 6 14-inch squares. And now we're going to move over to the machine and show you how I like to add the hems on here. All right, so if you want to press your seams before sewing, which I honestly don't usually, because I just want to fly through my project. So you might notice I'm not measuring, I'm just eyeballing a 1/4 inch. You can measure, you can eyeball, whatever makes you happy. And then I'm going to fold it over another time. Oops. It does get kind of hot. So use your favorite method, measuring, not measuring, whatever you want to do. And so that was one side. It really doesn't take that long. And then we're going to flip it over here, and I'm going to keep going around. And with the magic of technology, it's going to happen really fast for you guys. finishing up pressing. That really didn't take too long. So now we will go stitch it. Okay, so here's my pressed napkin ready to sew. I have my number 10 foot on here, which is a Bernina foot, and it's called the edge stitching top stitching foot. It has this little fin here, which is going to ride against the edge of my fabric. And I'll move my needle over to the side a little bit so that it's going to stitch up on this piece here. So I did bring my thread up. Normally with a lot of these new machines, you don't have to. You just cut your thread down here, close your door, and you go. But I did want to be able to trim it nicely because this will end up on the outside of the napkin. So keep that in mind too. When you are sewing this, your bobbin thread is what's going to show on the right side. So I do have matching thread. I have the same thread, both the top and the bottom. And I'm lining that fin up right with the edge of the fabric. I moved my needle over 2 notches to the right, and I lengthened my stitch length to, I have it at 3 1/4. Whenever I do any kind of top stitching, I always make my stitch length a little bit longer, and that sounded good to me, 3 1/4. Okay, so here we go. I am going to back up a few stitches, and then I'm going to keep this folded. So I'm just going to keep sewing all the way down, keeping this fold lined up with the fin, keep checking my fold over as I go. Okay, so we have a nice straight line here, and it looks good on the front too. And then my machine does cut my threads. I'm just going to get rid of those 2 little pieces of thread and then move on to the next section. So if you want to be real picky about it, you can make your, since I auto cut, I'm not going to do that next time. I'm going to cut it myself. I did make my bobbin thread a little bit longer. So I will pull that up again, and then next time, instead of using the auto cutter, I'm going to just pull my threads over and cut them on the side of my machine. Okay, so folding this over again, I have a nice clean square edge here. So backed up, and I'm going to keep going forward now. Okay, so I'm just going to bring it over and cut it, and now I know I have my long tails, so I will go in and trim these. I'm kind of silly. I like to trim it on the pretty side first and all the way down to the fabric, and then when I flip it over, I just tug on that thread a little bit to make sure I don't have any little tiny thread tails sticking out on the good side. And then we'll trim that guy too. So I'm going to keep going around just like that. I'm going to trim these guys too, and I'll meet you at the end. All right, so this is all sewn up and done, and we have a napkin. Yay! So now I'm going to show you sewing without pressing first, because that is honestly how I normally do it. You probably get a nicer, crisper finish if you press it first, but that takes time, and so I usually just get in here and fold it and go. And then you just keep working your way down as you go. So Carrie was telling me that we had too much glare on the camera here. So love this machine. I was able to get into the settings and just turn down the needle light. That was pretty cool. It was a little bit thick right there, so I was having a little trouble going through. So I got my trusty stiletto. All right, and one more time around. And another napkin done. Yay. So at this point, I would throw them in the wash. I just wash them on cold, dry them on low, and then I fold them as soon as they come out of the dryer. And they are flat enough for my purposes. Some people might like to press them. I don't bother. And also, I do not wash the fabric before I make the napkins because it's laying so nice and flat, and I think it's so much easier to sew if you don't wash them first. But I always do wash fabric before I use it on my face. Like if I'm going to use the napkin on my face, I want it to be clean and washed. I want all the sizing and any chemicals off of it from the factory. And especially with pillowcases, same thing. I don't wash the fabric ahead of time because it's so much easier to sew when it's nice and flat. But I definitely wash it before I put my head on it. So that's how I do the napkins. And next we have Shelly showing us how to serge the edge, do a rolled edge on the serger.
All right, so I'm going to show you how to use a rolled hem on the serger. I'm using the Bernina L850, which is a little beast of a machine. I love it. I've already set it up with 3 threads and the rolled hem. I am going to have the cutter on, and here we go. I'm just going to start to serge. Oops, let me get my foot pedal adjusted. Here we go. So I daisy chain them together because I usually sew them in bulk, and so I'm just going to keep serging one side at a time. And you just serge right off when you get to there. I do line up on the side of my foot or someplace on my machine as I serge. And there is a method to why I'm doing 4 at a time or 6 at a time, you'll see. So I serge off the last one when I've decided that I have had enough, and sometimes it might be 10 or 12 or 4, but you always want to go back and start with that same one. So we are going to serge down this and go over the hump of the rolled edge, okay? So you always, except for the last sewing, you always want to go over your hump at the end, not at the beginning of your napkin. And as you get down to this edge, you want to slow down a little bit so it can go over that hump before you add your next one. Over the next one. And so if you notice, by doing 4, I have a whole set done when I'm done with these 4. And so I will go ahead and do that 3rd side, and then I'll be back to show you the 4th side. All right, so as we get to this 4th side, you'll see we have a rolled hem on the top and on the bottom. And so now you're going to have to go over a bump to start. And it's just a little bit trickier. You start the same way, set it up, except you're going to hold your thread out to the side. And as you start, and when you get up to your thread almost up to the needle, on some machines you do have to kind of lift the foot a little bit. Not so much on this machine, just because you are going over a hump first. I hold the thread as it cuts off the bottom hump, and there we go. Voila. So we have a rolled hem napkin. It's rolled on all 4 sides. And once I got through this deck of 4, then I'd have a set of 4. And we'll talk about the corners in just a second. All right. So here's our napkin. It looks fabulous. I tend to do a little differently than Teresa. I just throw mine in right with my laundry, and they get washed on warm or cold and thrown in the dryer, and sometimes get folded right away and sometimes not. I do wash them before I use them, and these have lasted forever. And I fold mine whatever way they fit into your basket. I fold mine like this, and then fold them again when they go to the table, like that. So let's talk about these threads on the corner, though, because we don't want those. So if you notice, you've got one little serger tail, and we're going to trim it about a quarter of an inch from the edge, leaning towards an eighth. Cut that tail off, and you're going to reach with your finger, and you're just going to pull a thread. And it doesn't matter which thread you pull, and they turn into a knot. So if you cut your thread too long, let me show you how because I have been known to do this, all is not lost. When you pull it, you go, oh wait, look, my knot is way up here. Well, that's not what we want. So you just go back and you cut off that knot, and then you pull your threads again. So, and there's a little knot there. And you'll trim off your threads. And I don't worry a ton about trimming at this point, because sometimes I do go ahead and fray lock them with the threads a little bit longer, so that way I can trim them off. And what you can use are any of these. I've got fray check, fray block, and I've got fray lock. Any of those work for doing your edges. Initially, your edges with any of these will feel a little bit stiff, maybe a little even crunchy, but as you wash them, they get softer and softer and softer. And I've never noticed them using napkins. And I have family members that have used napkins for, gosh, almost 4 years now, and they are still not having their corners fray or anything or threads on them. So they will turn out like this one, and you'll see there's just a little corner, and but they look great. So there you go. So a question came up, do I fray check the whole rolled hem? No, just the corners that I've knotted, those serger threads that I've cut and knotted them. It's just the little corner, like no more than an eighth to a quarter on each side of the napkin. Also, as far as picking thread colors, for serger, it just depends on what you like. These I did red, I went bright. These I went bright and just had my rolled hem fade into it. So it just depends on what colors you have and what you like. So as far as what stitch length I use on my serger, I use the absolute smallest rolled hem that I can get away with on my machine. Some are a little bit tighter than others, but unless you're using thread that really contrast, you can't really see. And I mean, even thread that does.
That's a pretty tight seam. It looks like these stitches are a little further apart on here,
Yeah.
which I think is great when it's kind of blending into the fabric. But yeah, it's nice that it's a real solid line.
Yeah,
Although, I don't know, it'd be fun to play with. Play with it and see what you like for stitch length.
exactly. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it just depends on how you like to sew and what you like to sew. I tend to be a little lazier sewer, let's be honest. So I love to use my serger, but
And I like a more finished look with the whole folded over hem. So I will probably always do mine this way.
Yeah.
Yours, so these were cut the same. So yours would end up being a little larger than mine because your you don't lose that 1/2 inch on each side.
yeah. And mine might be a little wigglier than Teresa's because I'm
They're
not
just
always
running through the serger.
They are
fast.
running through the serger as fast as I can get them.
They're so cute.
But there's nothing wrong with it. I have to pull threads. You have to iron or fold. But they make great gifts.
Yeah. These are for me. Gift for me.
These are being gifted to someone who hopefully is not watching the video. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching our tutorial. Have fun making some napkins.